Welcome back, baseball fans, to the 1978-81 end of regular season playoff preview. We can show you what has transpired in the Fall League that is going to begin its playoffs in a very abbreviated fashion. These are the end of season standings, and we'll begin in the American League East, where the New York Yankees, a team that should be winning this division, though the foes in the division are pretty darn tough. Baltimore and Boston, of course. And they finally won the American League East. Took them 3 years to do it. Of course, we knew they would do this in 76, 7, 8, 80, and 81. Remarkable period there for the Yanks. Baltimore does get the wild card. They won the World Series a year ago. Boston misses out. They won the World Series 2 years ago. Toronto had a tough year in the East. And then in the North, we have a Cinderella. The American League Cinderella is the Cleveland Indians. And I talked before about how if you move Cleveland and Detroit away from the American League East in this period, there's a reasonable chance that either the Indians or Tigers would blossom. Well, it worked out for the Indians, not so much for the Tigers. And the Indians won this division by 2.5 games. Expos had one of their best seasons as they're finally getting that young nucleus of players who get into the playoffs in 1981. A great young team. Almost. They were right on the cusp. The big team in the American League this year is your Kansas City Royals, the 20-game winner of a possible 21. It's the maximum number of games you can win in this abbreviated season. They won 20. Number one seed, they have the MVP, they have the Fireman of the Year. They almost had a Cy Young winner, and this team was close. And the Brewers, a team, Harvey's Wallbangers, that goes to the 82 World Series. They get all that lumber up in Milwaukee, the true blue Brew Crew. Some say the 79 season, that offense, those sluggers, was better than 82. But they're in the playoffs. Twins just fell apart at the end there. They had a chance, but they got swept by the Brewers. And I don't know what happened to the White Sox. It just completely fell off for them. And finally out west, in a pretty lackluster division, the sleeping California Angels outlasted their opponents and yawned through this division, which is kind of funny. Because it used to be that the Oakland A's in the early 70s were yawning through this division and just winning it without much competition. And so therefore the records are often deceiving. Not to mention, the records are always going to be deceiving in the Fall League because you're playing best of 10. You're playing each of your rivals up to 10 times, possible 30 games. And then you play just 4 other games in your league. So you're beating up each other the whole year to determine this. So sometimes when you see a great record for Cleveland, it's because these teams are bad versus Cleveland going outside of their division and win a lot. That's the big difference between the Fall League and the Summer League. Let's go over to the National League for a second. Start at the top. In the East, we have a shocker. The Atlanta Braves. They win this division a half game better than the Phillies, winning a tiebreaker. They didn't have to play the tiebreaker. And it's because the Phillies just... It was Mike Schmidt and nobody else helping this team throughout the year. And, And you could blame the Marlins and the Mets, two teams who should have been doormats, for putting up a big fight. Let's go back up to the American League East for a second. You see Toronto here? 12 under 500. Those 12 decisions are up here, right? But if you look down here, the Mets -2 and the Marlins -2. You're looking at a +4 possible, and there's just a +3, as they are only they played outside of the division a game over. So the Braves are the only team to make it. They're the number 4 seed. The class of the National League is the Pirates. They are probably, if you had to pick it, a World Series, you'd probably pick the 80 Royals versus the 79 Pirates. That's sort of where we're at right now. Pirates also boast an MVP, and they boast a Cy Young winner, which will be surprising, and we'll see that. Break up your Chicago Cubs. The Fireman of the Year really helped this team sneak into the playoffs off of a disappointing Reds team and a Cardinals team who was really good in 81, and of course they win the World Series in 82, but they still aren't there yet. Now here are two playoff teams that really mess the National League up. When you get the two, we know one of these teams is going to the playoffs, but to get two of them in really hurts your traditional Major League franchises like the Astros or the Reds or the Phillies. And yeah, it's because the Portland Vegas squads beat the topping off of the Rockies and the Diamondbacks, two teams who are traditionally set up better since they have a little bit of baseball history, where these two teams are completely fictional. But it didn't happen this way. Portland and Las Vegas had some incredible roster just come alive all at once. And one team had to be a great wild card in this case. You could, the Pirates and Portland and Vegas are the three hottest teams in the National League. And out west, the Dodgers, just like the Angels in the American League, this whole division just kind of fell asleep on everybody, particularly the Padres at the end, the Giants. And the Dodgers, who looked pretty lackluster, got the division win, which is all they needed to do. Once they get into the playoffs, they might make some hay, because they do have, of course, a great roster, and they are your 78, 77, and 78 World Series participants and an 81 world champion. So those are the division standings. I'm going to take a quick look at the wild card games. Over here, wild card games, 2 in each league. In the American League, oh my goodness, folks. Number 6 Baltimore visits number 3 New York. And it will be 1979 Mike Flanagan, a Cy Young winner, against 1978 Ron Guidry, a Cy Young winner. How about that? That's amazing. The other wild card game, your number 5 Milwaukee Brewers will send 78 Mike Caldwell, who won 22 games in that particular year, against Nolan Ryan, his final card for the Angels before he goes to Houston. So that's in the American League. In the National League, we've got 5 going to 4. That would be Las Vegas is 5, visiting Atlanta 4. Las Vegas, because they've been drafting really nicely, they have John Tudor. Tudor was a Red Sox initially, before he was traded to the Pirates and Cardinals in the middle of the 80s. So his 1980 card with Boston was selected by Las Vegas, and he will get the start on the road in Atlanta against Phil Negro. And in the other series, your number 6 Cubbies and your number 3 Dodgers, you got Rick Russell, his probably best year in Chicago before he'll have better years in the 80s with the Giants and the Pirates, but he has to suffer from Wrigley Field effects. But anyway, he gets the start in the wild card game, number 6, against Dandy Don Sutton's 1980 card with a 2.20 ERA. This is a great year for Don Sutton, because we had his 72 card in the summer league we just played, and we've got his 80 card in the fall league, 8 years apart. The 2 leagues, summer and fall, are 8 years apart, is how I do this, to get some distinction between the two. And that's your pitching matchups for the wild card round. After the wild card round, you have your divisional series, best of 5. This is just like Major League Baseball. Your league championship series, best of 7, and your World Series, best of 7. So it's an abbreviated postseason, unlike the summer league, which goes on for a couple months. August and September, I do a postseason tournament and the playoffs. So now, let's take a look at some stats and see how we got to this point. Let's start with team stats. And the overall team stats, both leagues are combined. Look at this Portland expansion team. 309. My goodness, how does that happen? We have some short sample players. And again, the expansion teams, their only chance is to find success on those extra player short sample guys and use them in a short term. But normally, there's not nearly enough of them to compete against the traditional Major League Baseball powerhouses. But every once in a while, you get one, and Portland's got it. They might not do it this next year. They probably hit 260 a year ago, and they might hit 258 tomorrow. But for this year, they hit 309. You got the Pirates hitting 302, a retooled Pirates team. And we'll look at a couple of their players that went out of their way to get some guys with on-base percentage, as they were always a free-swinging club in this decade, but they weren't winning enough games and scoring enough runs, so he secured them some guys who walk. Then you got George Brett's Royals. George Brett's brought the team batting average over 300. Simple as that. The Astros missed the playoffs and missed an opportunity. They're a really good team, and this was a team that had a net positive run differential. They'd win 8-2, then lose 1-0. Their ERA was a very unsightful 4.57. We'll look at the pitching stats in a different graph. Here's Vegas again, 296. So you see what I said about Portland and Vegas. They just got some great offenses. However, only 15 home runs. And look at the Mets team, very much like Vegas. Nice batting average. This is the Met team that's got that Joel Youngblood and the Huey Brooks card, and it's got Pete Rose's 78 card. That will expire and allow him to go to the Phillies. Just 13 home runs for those Mets. And there, speaking of the Phillies, there they are. Giants didn't make it, Rangers, etc. Here's your Brewers. Brewers got the 42 home runs. That makes sense. Pirates got 36. And we'll see individual stats eventually. Stolen bases, nothing jumps out. Here you go. The Expos. This is Tim Raines' team. And he led the league in stolen bases, and so did his team with 37. Other stats to look at as we go down the list. It's a shame about the White Sox. They had 260. They had 42 home runs, but they had a 5.74 team ERA. That's awful. I mean, nothing more to say about that. Colorado Rockies. We know they will usually lead the league in homers, and they did, but they also hit 258 with a 4.87 ERA because they just build their team around home runs. And as it drifts down to the bottom, look at this. Baltimore. I do not understand this 2 or 3 years in a row now. They had 240 last year, won the World Series. You'll get to see Baltimore again shortly when we look at this number in a different graph. They only had 235, 10 points out of next to last place. And this was the worst team in the American League right here, Ohio. And yeah, but Baltimore limps in as a wild card. Now we'll go to pitching and we'll see those Orioles again. Here's your pitching stats. Baltimore leads the league in ERA. My goodness. And whip. And then you got the Yankees right there with them. Oh my goodness, folks. You've got Cy Youngs and Fireman of the Year and all sorts of great pitching awards on these two squads. But look at Baltimore's 46-cent advantage in earned run average to the second place team. That's almost like the gap we saw in batting average. They hit horribly and pitched amazingly, and they made the playoffs. Expos again. They're a good team. They got some great pitching. Steve Rogers and company, and Scott Sanderson, and you got Gary Carter, and you got Raines and Cromartie, and yeah, they're getting good, folks. Here is your Cinderella. Cleveland Indians, 3.50 ERA with a 2.76 batting average. Both better than normal. Portland wins that division because they can also pitch, 3.65. Texas Rangers had a losing record, but look, they hit for batting average and their ERA is respectable. I guess we should go to the dregs of all of baseball and figure out what happened. Oh, look at the White Sox. 5.74. Toronto, 5.49. But you can blame this 5.49 on Baltimore, New York, and Boston right there. Padres just can't ever figure things out. And now, lastly, we'll go to individual awards, individual players. We'll start all in the American League first and go through this. I don't do an all-star game or anything like that. This is a pretty quick and dry fall league that will wrap up around Super Bowl weekend. But George Brett, and folks, this is not my first rodeo using the 80 George Brett card. I had this card as a kid, right? And I've used this card in many leagues. And a funny part about Brett with a 390 card of 1980 is that he'll hit 357 for me. He'll hit 371 for me one time. But this might have been the best individual performance of that Brett card. He actually does finally hit 400, 426. 10 homer and 37 RBI. Let's quickly find out how many games was that again. I want to get to Kansas City's. Kansas City didn't have to play a lot. They played 30 baseball games. They played 30 out of a possible 34 games. Did Kansas City. 34 means that all games go to the max. Win the series by +1. So when you're 20 and 10, you can't play 34 games, obviously, because you're wiping teams out. But 30 games, 10 homer, 37 RBI, he swiped a base. Mickey Rivers, 333 card played up to it. Buddy Bell's 329 card played up to it. That's pretty cool. That's cool. These guys are 1980 teammates. And that explains why you saw that Rangers with a high batting average. And they didn't have Al Oliver to rely on, as he was sent in a different transaction from the Pirates to Seattle instead of Texas in this recreation. So they didn't have him. Larry Parrish is a great card for the, 79 Larry Parrish card for the Montreal Expos. You know, if there was no Mike Schmidt, he would have been your Silver Slugger, I believe. Les Cano's card, 1979, crushes lefties. Easler's 80 card hits 338. I don't know what Mary Guerrero's doing there. Maybe this is another reason. Here you get some outlier. That's a real outlier right there. Mary Guerrero with all those guys. That's why Texas had a high batting average. Let's see. There's Al Oliver, but he's with Seattle. Had a nice year. Human rain delay. We don't have walks here. Look at that. He only had 82 charged at-bats for an everyday player. Look at the at-bats for most of these guys. Easler was in a platoon, and Guerrero was, but Hargrove wasn't. That means these are walks. So he probably hit 329 with like a 450 or 500 on base. The human rain delay. You know, Hendrick had, for the Ohio team was their best player. Here are some other runners-up for the MVP. And yes, Reggie Jackson, my goodness, this is an MVP season for a Yankee team that wins the American League East with Reggie's 1980 card to hit 300. He hits 319 with it, 18 homers and 39 RBI. And how many games was this for the Yankees? 39 RBIs in 31 games. So a higher RBI than Brett, but Brett's batting average gave him that award. That was ridiculous. I mean, my goodness, not only do you hit 400 in a short sample, but you also are 45 points ahead of the next guy. So Reggie, clearly one of the runners-up, and the other runner-up, equal or close to Reggie, is Mr. Jim Rice in Boston. 15 homer and 32 RBI in about 30 games. So this was the year of offense. This 4-year, when you add in the 1981 players, there's a ton of hitting in that season because of the strike, and you got some incredible performances. And this is the year of the pitcher. The league ERA was 4.30. It was unbelievable. So the year of the hitters, I mean, yeah. Reggie 18, Jim Rice had 15 home runs there. Have we seen some Portland players? I gotta find somebody in here. Oh, they're in the National League. Duh, that's why. Okay. These are just American Leaguers. And then, of course, we have your American League Rookie of the Year. Rookie of the Year. Batting average is not there. I understand. 28 stolen bases to pace baseball. Ricky Henderson will be up here somewhere. Let me see where Ricky is. Julio Cruz at 19. Ricky Henderson. So Ricky Henderson at 18. Right? And 121 at-bats. Raines didn't play every day because he had bad defense. 98 at-bats, 28 stolen bases. So Raines gets Rookie of the Year. Heck of a performance there. And, yeah. Let's go scroll down to some pitching now. These guys all struggled at the bottom there. Okay, American League pitching statistics. Here we go. Look at Baltimore. So this is the number is where he is in the rotation. That's the number 4 starter. So they got Palmer, Flanagan, Dennis Martinez, and then they get around to Scott McGregor. That's why he only has 38 innings. But he's the only American Leaguer to get an ERA below 2. McGregor is better against righties than he is against lefties, and that's very valuable. And there's Flanagan, who did not get the Cy Young with a 2.09 ERA. A little disappointing. The wins are not necessarily here in the American League. It's all mediocre and spread out. Rudy May. Len Barker really helped out Cleveland. That was a nice move there. Tommy John was better than advertised. I thought he was kind of mediocre. Tanana led the Angels who were in the playoffs. Here's Mike Caldwell. He also did not get the Cy Young. He was snubbed. So we're seeing some Cy Young snubs. Caldwell, 5-1, 254 for a playoff team. Let's see here. Some Tigers and Rangers there. We got to come down a little bit. There's Nolan Ryan on the Angels. Gaylord Perry on Cleveland. They're both in the playoffs. But we gave it this year, American League Cy Young, to Ron Guidry. And the reason was he was the only 6-game winner in the American League, which really, the 3 losses are kind of, you have to understand that he's losing games to Baltimore and Boston. So he's 6-3, and he gets the Cy Young. His ERA is a little high. He's your 78 Cy Young winner. The ERA is a little bloated, but we gave it to him. The only 6-game winner in the American League. Actually, I got to scroll down and show you another guy. There's a 7-game winner down here, but his ERA is Dennis Leonard, 7-game winner, 389. Could have given it to him. I just felt like Guidry has the card, and he lived up to it when he had to. And Leonard got much more support. He got, look at the 389 ERA. He got a lot more runs. The Royals just rolled people in a weak division. That's why Leonard did so well. And Guidry had to fight, scratch, and claw going up against, Bill Lee and McGregor and Flanagan and Palmer. And, yeah, so that was how that was decided. As we get down into the pitching a little bit in the American League, we'll get into the relievers. Doug Corbett did a nice job with the Twins. Didn't give up anything. 0 ERA, 7 saves. But your American League Fireman of the Year, another Kansas City Royal, in just 15 2/3 innings, you get 11 saves and a 172. Saved 11 of those 20 wins. Dan Quisenberry. He's your American League Fireman of the Year. Some interesting performances. Darryl Knowles had an ERA of 10.34. That's not a misprint. It kind of happens sometimes. A lot of times guys have to stay in these games because they don't have deep rotations, deep rosters. Now let's go into the National League now. Try and get this done for you. So what a fight at the top of. Normally these guys wouldn't be all the way at the top in batting average. I'm talking Stargell and Schmidt. But yeah, here they are with everything else. I mean, it's their world, but unfortunately for Mike Schmidt, you didn't do that well at the end of the year, and your team missed the playoffs. And this guy up here had 50 RBI in 30 games and the 16 homers and had hit 431. Willie freaking Stargell, just one of the best performances ever in the fall league. His 78 card was in play. Not the 79, the 78 card was used and just tore it up. And that's why the Pirates had the #1 seed in the National League East. He is your most valuable player. Schmidt, look at the stats for a runner-up. 404, 13-41 in 30 games. That's unbelievable. Who else is up on here? That's noteworthy. Dave Kingman, you got to give him some credit for the Cubs making the playoffs. He's 11-37 with a 352 average. Let's see what we else have going on here. There's Dave Parker. 23 RBIs is okay, but I tell you what, Pirates had a lot of ducks in the pond this year for Cobra. I don't know, you may have left some of those ducks out there in the water. The top 2 guys on Pittsburgh had a ton of on base. I don't know. I don't have walks here, which is disappointing. But I'll see if I can find them in the printout somewhere. Let's find some of these Portland guys I mentioned. There's Art Howell. Art Howell's hitting 347. Are you kidding me? You got Tom Verizor hitting 336. What is going on? What's going on, folks? John Milner hitting 336, 723. That's good. Where are the good Portland hitters? My goodness. Terry Poole, 317. Now, your Rookie of the Year in the National League, and the criteria is it's got to be a guy whose first appearance in my league is in the year of 1981 with the 81 card, and it is Kirk Gibson. And it's not with the Tigers, it's with the Dodgers, who he would play for in the late 1980s. But there was a trade that was made. Dodgers gave up a lot to get him, just to get him in the National League. Let's see, Dale Murphy. Okay, he's a playoff team. He's in the playoffs. Let's see. Look at Pete Rose on the Mets at 313. And is there any other homer or stolen base performances here to note? Al Bunbury. Bunbury, that Las Vegas team, he's the leadoff, the spark plug of that Las Vegas team, and he's in the playoffs, 15 steals, AA stealer. Terry Pulga has 14 steals, he's a single A stealer. Ted Simmons, 36 RBI on a Cardinal team that slumped at the end, missed the playoffs. Rick Monday had 11 home runs with that 1981 card, the Blue Monday card. The Blue Monday home run that knocked the Expos out of the playoffs that year. That's that card right there. And we're getting down to Rico Cardian, 10 home runs and so forth. And the guys who struggled. Dan Meyer, look at this for the Phillies. 10 and 31, but he hit 208. Very opportunistic when he made contact. Davey Lopes stole 20 bases, but hit 188. Some weird combinations you'll see at the very bottom of the league. And once you didn't qualify with a number of bats, it'll be all messed up here. Let's get to the pitching. National League pitching statistics. So your National League Cy Young winner, the Pirates, makes sense. Jim Bibby. It was Jim Bibby who joined the Pirates for their 79 squad and helped them win the World Series in 79. And here in 57 innings, he goes 7-0, the 2.53 ERA. He's the only pitcher 7 games over 500 in the whole league. He edges out some guys who didn't pitch as many innings. Here's Jerry Royce on this Portland team. Very good. J.R. Richard, Houston team, misses the playoffs, but really his ERA, he should be better than that. There's Russell. He'll be starting a wild card game against Sutton. And there they are. Look at that. 2.77 ERA each guy. For Sutton, that's underachieving. For Russell, it's slightly overachieving. Steve Stone, we talked about that 25 win card of 1980 for Baltimore. How will that do away from Baltimore? Well, in 49 innings, he has a 2.94 ERA, which is actually better than the card plays, but it was just 2-3. And yeah, he didn't really help Arizona that much. I kind of figured that was going to happen. You know, winning 25 games is very scary because you have to figure you're getting really lucky. You're getting a lot of run support. And sure, yeah, that's what happened there. We also have the firemen in the National League. Oh, of course. Where would I be without mentioning Bruce Sutter? Just like Quisenberry had 11 saves in 16 and a third innings. 55, I can't drive 55. Bruce Sutter, your fireman of the year in the National League, and it's not just the lone Cub who gets to go to the All-Star game. This is a playoff team. It's Sutter, it's Buckner, it's Dave Kingman. You know, I mean, it's an interesting Cub team, and it's a one-game wild card. If the Cubs dump the Dodgers, well, frankly, if the Cubs get a one-run lead over the Dodgers through 6 innings, I'm bringing Sutter in for 3. It's a wild card game, one game. So, and we had 465 games played in the fall league. We don't have. Or I don't have it in this. Oh, actually, I do have it in this sheet. I have to go over here and give you the final stats. It's not a good year for pitching, folks. It was not a good year. So 465 games were played. The league hit 274. And the league ERA finishes at 4.30. And I can tell you, I don't think I ever saw this thing between 4.28 and 4.33. after the first, month of the season. It just stayed exactly at 430 for most of the time. Normally, the ERAs are bloated at the beginning, and then as the season progresses, the pitching and the better teams knock out the bad teams, and the ERA goes down. Didn't happen. 430, and in the Summer League, in the early 70s, that league ERA was about 388. So almost a half a run difference per game by the late 80s. You got more teams, you're adding Seattle and Toronto, and then again you have those outlier years in 81, 148 whip, 339 on base percentage, bunch of guys with walks. So I guess we'll stop it there for this little analysis. Yeah, we'll stop it there. This has been a review of the 78-81 Fall League, and we'll begin with the 4 wildcard games coming up. Thanks for checking this out. We'll see you next time.